Hi everyone, this is Celine from Blue Calla Patterns and welcome to video 2 for the Passion Flower Tote. In this video we're going to do the exterior assembly of our bag. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to make our exterior pocket. So the first thing you'll need are your exterior pocket pieces and your exterior pocket pattern piece. So before I install my magnetic snap, I just quickly put the location of where I'm going to be installing the snap by placing my pattern piece over top, just making a little mark. We're also going to make the mark on the right side because that's what we need for the actual installation. But I just wanted to know approximately where it would be located and where I should place my scrap of fusible fleece. So I do like to add the little bit of fusible fleece just to reinforce that area of the pocket. Some magnetic snaps are really strong and you don't want them to tear out of your fabric. So I'm just going to carefully flip it this way and then just fuse that in place. Okay, I'll give that a chance to cool. So now again, I'm going to use the pattern piece and place it this time on the right side of my lining piece and mark where I'm going to be installing my snap. So to make your marks for your prongs, you're going to need one of your washers. And in the pocket piece, I like to install the male half. It's usually a little bit thinner. So that's what your male half should look like. Whoop. So I place the washer, and I want the mark to be in the center hole of the washer. And then I mark the location of the prongs on either side. And then very carefully, I'm going to use my seamer. So when I do that, I enter on the bottom part of the mark. And then I don't just start ripping like I would with stitches. I actually make the pointy part come out at the top of the line. And then I rip. And that way there I'm not ripping a bigger hole than I need to. Okay. And then because this is fabric, not vinyl, it will fray. So we do need to apply fray check. Okay, so I'm just going to add a bit of fray check along both of those cut marks. And then I'm going to insert the prongs of the snap inside those two cuts. Then turn this over. And then because I like to be very cautious, before I add the washer, I'm actually going to also add a little scrap of Peltex. So I usually just press like this, and it'll create two small marks. And cut those out, and then I'll place this, and then I'll spread those prongs to secure it. And you want to place something over the prongs so that they don't damage the exterior fabric. So once again, I'm just going to put a little bit of tape here. Okay. And now that part is done. So now this is an optional part, whether or not you would like to add the faux piping to the top edge of the pocket. So if you do want to add it, you'll need the exterior piece for your exterior pocket. And then I cut according to what the pattern instructed. I cut out a piece of my vinyl, and I'm just going to fold it in half lengthwise, wrong sides together, and just clip it, and then I'll just quickly baste it together with 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Just a quick basting. I just want it to stay folded in half. So I've just quickly basted along these raw edges, and I used a contrasting thread so that you can see what it looks like. So now I'm just going to place this, and you want the raw edge. And again, remember when I said to place an arrow on the wrong side, and just make sure that you have the correct top edge of your pocket. So make sure that you double check that you're doing this on the correct top edge. So I'm just placing this along the top edge of the pocket. And then again, I'm just going to quickly baste it in place. I could do this all in one step, clipping the lining piece, but I don't like taking a risk that some of the pieces will shift when there's a lot of layers. So now I'm just going to again quickly baste this along the top edge. Okay, so this is now basted to the top edge. And then I'm going to take this and placing them right sides together. Make sure that the shape matches and everything is facing the right direction. And then clip all 3 layers together along that top edge. So first I like to make sure that these sides here match perfectly, and then I'll clip everything else in between. Now I'm not using pins because I'm using vinyl and needle holes are permanent. So if you have clips, it's better for you to use clips in this step. So now I'm going to sew these 3 layers together along this top edge. This time I'm going to use the regular seam allowance of 3/8 of an inch. And just make sure that you backstitch at the beginning and the end. Three layers are sewn together along the top. I used a contrasting thread again so that you can see what that looks like, and I backstitched at the beginning and the end. So now we need to flip it so that your pocket pieces are wrong sides together. And I like to just clip the bottom edges before I press so that I make sure that the pocket pieces are aligned correctly. And I do like to kind of finger press first because I'm using vinyl here. I don't want my iron to get too close and melt the vinyl. So I do find it's a bit helpful if I do this first and sort of help it along. Okay, and then we're going to press it. So I'm pressing very carefully, very slowly, making sure that I don't touch the vinyl. Okay, and then do it as well from the lining side. Very carefully. Okay. And now we're going to top stitch just beneath that faux piping here with 1/8 of an inch seam allowance all the way across, and I used a slightly longer stitch length of about 4. So now you will need one of your main body exterior pieces, and we're going to attach the exterior pocket to this main body piece. You're also going to need your main body pattern piece, and you'll see on the main body pattern piece that there is a pocket placement mark. So that's what we're going to be transferring to the main body pattern piece on the right side. So I'm using a regular pen, but the mark is within the seam allowance, so it will not show. And then actually what I like to do is I hold up my pattern piece to a window, and then I transfer all of my marks that I'm going to need to the wrong side, because you do need to do the marks in mirror image as well. Okay, so I have these 2 pocket placement lines now at the bottom of the main pattern piece, and those are going to be the bottom corners of our pocket. Now I will be installing a metal label, my handmade, but I actually like to do it after this next step, just to make sure that everything is nicely centered. So you're lining up these corners with these 2 pocket placement marks at the bottom, and then you're just going to clip that in place. And then I like to use pins for this part, so I just add a pin here. And now, in case you sewed the top edge of your pocket a little crooked, you might want to just, if you're really careful about centering and placement, you can just double check and make sure that this looks good. Yeah. You just want it to be the same distance here all across the pocket. And we'll need to find another pin. So I use pins in this place because you can't really use clips and hold the pocket properly. One last pin here. So I'm not going to baste along this bottom edge because I do want to add my my metal label. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to baste the pocket to the main body piece along both of these sides, and you'll want to use you could use a 1/4 inch seam allowance from the edge, and you're just doing a basting stitch, and make sure that you do come up here above the faux piping just a little bit. So now that the pocket is basted in place, we have to install the female half of our magnetic snap. So you're going to need the washer and the female half of your snap. And what I do is, because I didn't put this snap mark on the pattern piece, and the reason why is because there's a lot of room for error when you're attaching the pocket, and not everyone is going to get the placement 100% correct. So to be on the safe side, what I do is wait until this point to determine where I need to install this half of my snap. And what I usually do is I kind of just press into my pocket, and the male half will create sort of like a little indentation into the fabric. So you press pretty firmly down, And then you just feel for that little indentation and then you make a mark there. Okay, so once you have the mark for the center of your snap, you're just repeating exactly the same steps that we did to install the male half. So you have the mark centered in the middle hole of your washer. Then you mark the location of your prongs on either side. Carefully cut those out. And then again, you're going to apply fray check. Okay, so now the snap installation is complete. Check it to make sure it works. There we go. So now I want to install my metal label before I continue. It's the same installation as a snap, really. It has a washer and prongs. So I'm not going to repeat the steps. I'm just going to do them and you can watch. Now that I've completed the installation of my snap and my label, I can go ahead and base the bottom here shut. So we're now going to prepare our accent and connector straps. There are 8 of them and they're identical size. So I'm going to show you how to prepare one of them and then you're going to have to continue and do the remaining 7 pieces exactly the same way. So you flip one so that it is wrong side facing up and then draw a line down the center on the wrong side. Now, there's a couple of different ways of doing it. You can use a piece of double-sided tape and then fold in and glue using the tape and glue both halves down towards the center, so wrong sides together. So, and then you would end up with a 1/8 of an inch, a 1 inch wide strap piece. But sometimes double-sided tape is can gum up your needle, so I'm going to play it safe. However, if you're comfortable using double-sided tape and you want to just do it that method instead of sewing both halves down, absolutely go ahead and do that. I've made some that way myself because I'm comfortable with the tape, and a few of my testers have as well. But for this video, I'm going to sew them down because that is probably the less risky method of doing it. So instead of using double-sided tape, I'm going to go over to my machine and I'm going to fold the strap in half and sew with 1/8 of an inch seam allowance away from that center line where I'm folding. And I'm going to sew all the way down, stop and rotate, and then go across to the other side of the center line. And then you're just repeating the same thing on the other side. Now make sure that you backstitch at the beginning and the end when you're starting. Now I'm going to show you how to sew this at the machine. So this is what one strap piece looks like when it's finished. And now we are going to need to do exactly the same thing for the remaining 7 strap pieces. Now that we have all 8 strap pieces sewn up and ready to attach to our bag, we're going to take 4 of these and we are going to just set them aside. And then with the remaining 4, we're going to use these as our accent straps. Now to attach to the main body pieces, we are going to need our pattern piece, our main body pattern piece, so that we can mark the location of the accent strap. So this is the connector strap and this is the accent strap. So we want to mark this point, this point, this point, and this point. So we're starting with the main body piece that has the exterior pocket attached to it, but it doesn't matter really which one you start with. If you want to start with the other one, that's fine. So placing this on the right side, I'm just going to mark this location and this location, and then mark this area here. And then we flip this over and we do the same on the other side, mirror image. And then the bottom marks. Now I'm going to use some double-sided tape. It is full of fabric lint from cutting fabric near the tape. So we're going to use double-sided tape and we're going to add a strip on the wrong side of one strap piece to start. And I don't put the tape all the way from the top to the bottom. I leave a little bit of a gap where we're going to be sewing pieces together later, because it's better that you not sew through the double-sided tape as much as possible. It's not completely avoidable, so you will have to sew through some of it. So make sure that it's not too sticky. Okay, and then you remove the tape backing, and then use those marks as your guides. So if you're doing it properly, you should be covering this edge of your exterior pocket. The strap would be centered over that edge. Okay, and then stick it in place. And then you're going to go over to the machine and you're going to sew the strap to the bag's exterior. You're going to sew along both of the longer sides with 1/8 of an inch seam allowance from the edge of the strap. Now, one accent strap is sewn to the main body panel, and you probably noticed that I also sewed across the edges here so that I can then just go ahead and trim the excess strap. Now I'm going to repeat the same thing to add the second strap here, and then I'm going to repeat the same 2 strap pieces on the remaining main body piece. Now that we've sewn the accent straps on both of our main body exterior pieces, we're going to set them aside for just a moment. And now you're going to need either if you've chosen to do handles, your 2 handle pieces, or if you've chosen to do shoulder straps, the 2 shoulder strap pieces. Now the instructions here are the same. It doesn't matter what length you've chosen to make. The technique is the same. You'll just have longer pieces if you've selected to do the shoulder straps. So the first thing we're going to do, and I'm just going to move the machine over a bit because we're going to need more space. We're going to draw a line on the wrong side of both pieces along the entire length and down the center. So it sits there 2 inches wide. It's going to be, the line is going to be 1 inch from either side. Okay, and for the second piece as well. And I'll show you how to sew one of the handles, and then you'll be able to do exactly the same thing to sew the second one. Okay, so we'll just keep the one piece and I'll show you with the one piece. So you're going to need your rings. So either rectangle rings or whatever kind of strap ring you've decided to use. So you're going to need 2 rings per handle or shoulder strap. So the first thing you'll do is pass the end of your handle. I'm just going to call it handle from here on out, but if you're making shoulder straps, then you're using your shoulder strap pieces. So slip one end through 2 of the rings. Doesn't matter what side whatever is facing, we can turn them around later on. And then making sure that the strap piece is not twisted, or the handle piece, I should say, you're going to place those 2 short ends so they are right sides together. And I'm just going to use a pin to put them together. And now we're going to sew these together with 1/4 inch seam allowance. Make sure that you backstitch at the beginning and the end. Once you've sewn the short ends together, you're going to just finger press that seam open, and then you're going to top stitch it on both sides. And now what we're going to do is very similar to our accent and connector straps. So I usually start here where I've joined the strap pieces together, and I'm going to fold that so that the outside edge meets that center line. And keep your needle in the down position while you do this. And just sew 1/8 of an inch away from that center line, and you're going to fold and sew down the entire way. I should say the entire length of the loop. And just keep pushing your rings out of the way as you're sewing. So now I'm where I started sewing, and you can stop and back stitch and then flip it over if you like, but what I like to do is just sew up to the seam here where I join the ends together and stop. I absolutely always keep your needle in the down position throughout this entire process. Then I flip this, making sure that the seam is aligned, and then I sew across until I am 1/8 of an inch inside on this side of the strap. So now I'm doing the same thing as I just did. You're folding towards the center and then you're sewing it down. Now when you get to the end, you just have to go until you see the stitching start, and then do a little bit of back stitching. So now you should have this loop with 2 rings attached, and you're going to want to flip it so that where the raw edges at the center, you want those on the inside of the loop. So you want the nice finished side to be facing out. And you're going to take the rings and position them so they are one at each end. And then the seam you'll want to place, I don't place them close to the rings because I don't actually want much stress in that area. Although the sewing in the next step will relieve this area of any kind of stress from weight. But I do place it fairly close to one end, sort of like this. And then you're basically flattening the loop so that those raw edges are hidden inside the layers. And just use clips to hold them in place. Now, you can clip the whole way, but to be honest, I don't usually clip the whole way because it might move around as you're sewing. So be prepared to adjust if you need to. I'm just going to put these clips just to hold everything in place. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to basically sew a giant rectangle box. So I don't start near one of the rings. I sort of start along one side. I sew towards the ring, and then when I get close to the ring, I stop, I rotate and sew across, and then I sew down along this side. And I do the same at this end. I stop, I rotate, I sew across beneath the ring, then go all the way back to where I started and do a tiny bit of back stitching there. When you get close to the ring, you're going to want to sew as close as you can get to the ring and be able to rotate without the presser foot interfering with the sewing across just beneath the ring, like this. And also when you're sewing, make sure that your edges here are nicely aligned. Okay, so when you're done, this is what your handles will look like. So now you're going to need, let's take one handle and 2 connector straps. And I'm going to walk you through how to prepare the connector strap and handles and attach them to your main body panel, and then you're going to repeat the same set of steps to do it with the other handle and the other connector straps and the remaining main body piece. So pick what's going to be your wrong side of your handle, which is usually where you can see the seam. I consider that to be the wrong side. And then you're going to take one connector strap and you want it where the raw edges are facing up, so that is also the wrong side. And you're going to slip the connector strap through the ring, and then I want you to fold it over 2 inches. It doesn't have to be exact, just approximately 2 inches. And then I'm going to use some clips to just hold that in place. And I just clip the very edge because I'm going to be applying some double-sided tape again, and I don't want the clips to be in the way of that. Okay, like that. And then the same thing on the other side with the other connector strap. Okay, just like this. Now we're going to add some double-sided tape again. So you're going to start the tape 1 inch down from the ring, even a bit more is fine. We just really don't want to sew through the tape. And then you're going to again stop the tape about 1 inch or so from the bottom. It doesn't have to be precise, so that's why I'm not measuring. Now we're going to do the same for the other one. Okay, so that's what it should look like. This is the wrong side that you're looking at, and then the right side is on the other side. So again, you're going to need one of your main body panels and your pattern piece. And this time, it's very important not to use a regular pen. You must use a fabric pen. So I will get that. Okay, so now we're marking the location of the connector strap. So this is an older pattern piece. It doesn't have the text on it. So again, you're marking the 2 bottom edges. And then for the connector strap, I put 2 circles here, and then I punch those circles out with my hole punch. And that just makes it easier for me to make my marks. This is just like a white chalk pencil that I can erase after. And then you do the same thing on the other side. Okay. Then you'll take your prepared strap, and it's going to be placed like this. So because I added the piping, the faux piping here, it's going to be a little bit thicker here. So you're just going to peel off your tape backing, and the top corners here of your connector strap should be aligned with those 2 dots you just made, and then the bottom should fit here. Where did I put that? There we go. Just like that. And then same thing for this side. The top corners. Just like this. So I can see that I have a little bit of my faux piping sticking out. I didn't trim it, so I'm going to do that now. Just like that. And then the same thing on this side. Okay. All right, so we're going to sew 1 connector strap at a time, and you're going to do it exactly as you did for the accent strap, except this time you're sewing up to the ring. So I start at the bottom, and then I sew all along this edge. I stop and I rotate and I turn around, sew beneath the ring across, and then stop, rotate again, and sew down to the bottom. And then you repeat the same thing for this connector strap. Okay, so this panel is now finished. I'm just going to trim the tiny bit of strap that is sticking out here at the bottom. And if you want to set rivets, now is the time to do that. So when I'm setting rivets, usually I actually have a little rivet placement template somewhere in this messy studio, and I have no idea where I put it. So I'm going to be setting a rivet here, 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 and here. Now, rivets are completely optional, but I do like adding some. So I just make sure that I'm setting them at exactly the same position in the four locations. So I center it and I put it 5/8 of an inch away from the edge of the strap. Not sure why, but that's usually where I've decided to put it. I often get asked, how do you know when a rivet is set? Well, I kind of go by feel. So, first of all, I don't know if you could hear on the video that there was a snapping sound, and that's just locking the cap and the post together. But they're still not set. You could easily just pop those apart. I don't have a rivet press. I don't have the room for it. And I actually had one once upon a time, and I felt like I could tell if they were set a bit more if I did it manually. So I sold the press. Okay, and I will need a hammer. So you make sure that your cap is centered in the little anvil. It's pretty easy to do because it is, what is it, concave? So it sits nicely in the middle. And then make sure also that your cap is centered in the post, also concave. I'm not sure. Now for me, one way to know if it's set is if I tap on one that isn't set, it has like a hollow sound. And then if I tap on one that is set, there's no wiggle at all, and it just has a different sound to it. So this one is all done. You can rewind if you want this small portion, and you have to repeat all of the steps that we just did with the remaining handle, two connector straps, and the other main body exterior piece. Okay, now that we have both of our main body exterior panels ready, we can attach the bottom. So you'll notice that there is a little section here. There's a tiny little corner. So you're going to be lining up the corners here of the bottom piece with those corners here. And you're just going to clip them together and then sew together with 3/8 of an inch seam allowance just from here to here, and make sure that you backstitch at the beginning and the end. Now I won't do a close-up on the camera because this is a straight line. It's very straightforward. Now once that is sewn, you're going to flip it over. So when you're flipping it over, you want to make sure that the edge of your foam here is going to get caught in the top stitching. So make sure that you fold over, and you want all the seam allowance to go down towards the bottom piece. And I actually will add some clips to encourage it to do that. But you're definitely going to have to finger press while you're top stitching this seam. So we're top stitching here along the edge of the vinyl, and you're going to have to finger press and really encourage the seam allowance to stay down towards the bottom. So now I'm going to do the same thing to attach the other main body exterior to the other side of the bottom piece here. So the exterior of our bag has gotten quite large now. I have both of my main body exteriors attached to the bottom. So now we're going to sew up the sides of the bag. So you're going to place these so they are right sides together. And we're going to sew these sides together. What you want to do though is when you're clipping these together is to try and line these two up as closely as possible. So the top and the bottom edges. I am trying to do this and also still make it visible in the camera, but it is difficult because it's now very large. Okay, so I start usually with the top and the bottom corners. Clip those together, and then I can clip the rest in between. Okay. Now they're not perfectly aligned, so I'm going to try to adjust them a little bit. Okay. And so now we're going to start from the top corner, backstitch, sew all the way down to the bottom corners and backstitch again. So now I'm going to repeat exactly the same thing for the other side. So now we're going to box our corners. I'll do it from this view. So you're just flattening out here. And I also like to open this seam allowance. Like so. And we're going to sew these together. I like to sew the boxed corners twice. So I will sew once at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, and then a second time at 1/4 inch seam allowance from this edge here. I also forgot to mention that you should backstitch at the beginning and the end, which is super important in this step. Now I'm just going to trim my seam allowance a little bit, making sure that I don't touch the two lines of stitching. And then we're going to repeat exactly the same thing and box this corner. So now that both of the bottom corners are boxed, we can turn our bag right side out. So the last thing we're going to do in this video are the D-ring connectors. If you've decided not to make the crossbody strap and you're just making a shoulder bag, you can actually end the video here and move on to the next video. Otherwise, you'll want to complete this next step. So you're just going to follow the same method you've been using for the rest of our little strap pieces, and you're going to draw a line down the center on the wrong side. Now I'm using 3/4 inch D-rings, so my little strap pieces currently are 1.5 inches wide, but they are going to end up being 3/4 of an inches. So that's where I'm drawing the line, is 3/4 inches from one side. Oop. And then I'm going to be doing the same I did for all the strap pieces, is folding these halves in towards that center line, wrong sides together, and sewing them down. This time I'm going to sew 1/8 of an inch seam allowance from the outer edge. So this is what the little strap piece looks like. This is the wrong side, this is the right side, and you're going to slip a D-ring. Well, slip the strap through a D-ring, and then I'll just quickly baste these raw ends together. And then I'm going to baste this D-ring connector to one of the side seams of my bag. And I don't want the raw edges aligned with the top edge of the bag. I would like them to stick out the top of the bag at least 1/2 inch. So something like this. And then I'll just baste that in place across here. So this is what it looks like. And I'm going to do exactly the same thing and sew up the second D-ring connector and baste it to this side seam. So that's it for this video. In the next video, we're going to be doing our lining assembly, including the zipper panel closure.